Are ghosts real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was a...
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Celestial Oddities, PairOfNormal Guys podcast radio. I am Garrett Jagaman.
I'm going to be your co-host, Daniel James.
And tonight we have a great episode lined up for you, so make sure you stick around and listen to it. But in the meantime, we do have a couple announcements. We do want to thank our sponsors, Cryptid TV, for always supporting the show and everything that they do for us on the promotion end. Make sure you check them out at YouTube and Facebook. Great community to talk to like-minded people on all things supernatural, paranormal, esoteric. And it's a great, comfortable place to share your ideas. So make sure you check them out. If you've missed any of our recent episodes, make sure you listen to us across any platform, excuse me, from iTunes to iHeartRadio, Spotify, and anything in between. You can check out all past and present episodes. Just search Celestial Oddities. Click the like, share, and follow buttons. It helps move us up the podcast community rankings. We do bring you several shows per month, and we appreciate your support. Tonight, we certainly have a great episode lined up for you. Daniel, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're going to dive into tonight?
This is a topic that I find interesting, and it exists within the realm, the genre that we have here on the show. This is going to be about the concept of super soldiers and the super soldier programs.
I can't wait. There's certainly a lot of people that have been asking about this specific episode. Folks, if you are listening out there, please know anytime you have an idea or suggestion for us, you can go to our pages on Facebook and search Celestial Oddities. You will find our pages, like them, follow them, and drop us a comment. Anything you want to see on the show, we're glad to consider and certainly get together and make an episode out of it. And we heard you on this one, and we're certainly glad to bring you this episode. So Dan, why don't you jump in and tell us a little bit about your thoughts and what you put together for us tonight on super soldiers and the secret space program?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you a lot about it. I prepared a little a lecture. I prepared some notes for you guys that I want to go ahead and just dive into to maybe sort of ease you into it a little bit. Maybe some of you have heard about the secret space programs or the super soldiers. I know that anybody that's come into this outside of, like, say, for example, just the entertainment approach, getting more into the meat of it, you've probably heard of things like, you know, people like Corey Good, or maybe Randy Kramer, or maybe you've heard of like Emery Smith. Those are a lot of guys that they sort of broke into more of the mainstream aspect of the super soldier sort of secret space program idea, and a lot of the people in my community heard about these concepts from them first, and then over the course of maybe the last couple of years, a lot more people have come forward with their own stories and their own information to tell about this super soldier secret space program idea, and that's where I sort of tripped over it myself. I came into the concepts of these maybe even less than 5 months ago, and I found it very fascinating ever since. So that being said, Garrett, I don't know if you want me to just dive right in, or if you have any questions or comments for me before I start.
No, I mean, I definitely want to hear what you have to say. And folks out there, if you've probably seen or heard a little bit about this over the years in some fashion or another, where parts of the military, they've been said to have trained soldiers to be able to do different forms of telepathy, different forms of using your mind out of the normal by pushing someone to a breaking point and then being able to use that. And one of them is remote viewing, and this has been used a lot actually to find places halfway across the world, to find the layout of railroad yards where they're transporting bombs and all kinds of different things that have been captured and notated and used for an operation, yet no one was ever there. Someone learned how to remote view through certain programs that were, instilled upon them. So I'm sure a lot of you've seen things like that in movies, and that's where they get that from, that's something that's actually being done and has been used and reported in the past in military use. So, stick around. Dan's got some great concepts on this. Why don't you go ahead and jump in?
All right, guys. Well, listen, some of this is a little bit dark. I can tell you that in my studying over the last 5 months about these programs, I can tell you that a lot of our mainstream entertainment gets ideas for movies about the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. So it's weird. It's out there, but here we go, guys. Listen. The super soldier programs, also known as My Labs, are ran by shadow organizations outside of the public and often independent from our global governments. They are highly advanced military and genetic-based programs commonly used for combat, terraforming, and war-based missions. Here are some of the names of many of the organizations that I've come across in my studies. Division 6, ACIO, Kruger, the Earth Space Alliance, Nishawaffen, Yaro no Kunshu, the Space Intelligence Agency, Mars Defense Force, Earth Defense Force, Solar Warden, Radiant Guardian, Radiant Glory, DARPA, Umbrella, the CIA being one of them, Green Star, and Morbius. Now, those are weird names, but those are actually names of organizations and companies that if you have a lot of money, you can actually hire these companies and these shadow organizations to basically make you super soldiers for whatever it is that you want to do for your agendas. So diving back in here, although the approach to creating a super soldier has changed and evolved over the years, the most common practice in creating what we call assets, which is what super soldiers are, is assets to the organization. It is by finding adept children that have certain DNA types or psychic abilities, like Garrett said, people who can remote view, things like that. Any children that are adept in spiritual or sort of that sort of alternative abilities. Anything like a deeper intuitive abilities, things like that. What they do is they take these children and they force them into the programs. Children are commonly abducted around the ages of 6 to 14. And what they would do is they would commonly abuse the children mentally, emotionally, and physically until their minds would fractalize from the trauma that they've gone through. And then it creates what's called as an alter or an alter ego. This happens because the trauma inflicted forces them to disassociate into like a split personality idea. And that new alter that is created from the trauma can then be programmed into doing whatever their handlers want. They have their own names and numbers like codes, and superhuman abilities. They have a new set of memories, and all of that is separated from your natural birth identity. Okay, so that's a lot to take in. To sort of just recap on that big hit there is basically when you're young and susceptible to new experiences, that is when they tend to capitalize on children and abuse them to the point of creating an alter ego that they can program to do whatever they want with. And that's why a lot of people don't have memories, or if they do have memories of being a super soldier, they're fragmented. It's very hard for them to access those because the memories that they collect while being a super soldier, they sort of stay contained within the alter ego that they shift to from the trauma. It's very dark. Once the alter is created and you begin your training, you are also cloned several times, as most assets are used in combat and killed over and over again. They can move your consciousness right into a new sleeve or avatar that they create for you to keep you working on the battlefield. Okay, so that's another big thing that advanced technologies do exist that we know nothing about, that they can actually move your consciousness into other physical vessels, which I find to be very, very fascinating.
That is amazing. I mean, because then it's endless. You can constantly
Immortal.
be transported over and over and over again to another flesh suit.
Yep,
and
immortal.
You're immortal.
Yeah. So clones and avatars can be mixed with ET DNA, that's extraterrestrial DNA, to have attributes of several different races, making you more advanced and dangerous on the battlefield. The handlers have full control over the DNA and genetics of the avatar you are in during your missions. They are also implanted with explosives to force compliance. People are crossed with canine, insectoid, reptilian, avian, and feline DNA to make you more efficient in your avatar. They take people, okay, so let's say, for example, you're a kid and you're in a MyLab, you're being put into a MyLab program. They take people in the middle of the day, or they take you at night while you're sleeping by using a technology, a time dilation technology that fundamentally stops and rewinds linear time as they see fit. It was described that they can move through time 4,000 times faster than the standard shutter speed of your eye. Okay? We know that the standard shutter speed of the eye sees in 30 frames per second.
That's pretty
So
incredible.
they can move 4,000 times faster than the speed of your eyes, which I find to be pretty amazing. So they move in between and around linear time. For example, the program's called 20 and back. That's a very familiar term. Like if you see other shows on like Gaia TV, or you see super soldiers talking about their involvement in these MyLab programs, a common phrase used is 20 and back. So 20 and back is a 20-year or longer mission, give or take, and they can put you right back to the point that you were taken from for the mission itself. Everyone around you would have no idea that you were gone. So to recap that chunk right there, basically, I am a filmmaker and I use cameras and I study a lot about high speed, slow motion, frame rates, shutter speeds. All of that's very familiar to me because I have to change those settings a lot when using cameras. So I don't even have a camera that can shoot 4,000 shutter speed. I know that they have high-speed cameras, but 4,000 times faster than the rate your eye sees is almost like quantumly fast. So the way it was described when I studied this is pretty interesting. Imagine sitting in your living room and you're watching a TV show, but you're a super soldier and you don't know it. And they come and they take you for these 20 and backs. Whenever they need you for a mission, the organizations can come, they can stop time in your reality, come into your house, take you, okay, with your family sitting right around you. And then you would go do a mission outside of linear time, and then they would put you back to the moment that you were taken from, right next to like your friends and family while you're having dinner.
And no one would ever know you're gone, and well, honestly, you might even be a cloned version of yourself. So at that point,
yep,
the returned one actually isn't even the original, and no one would know.
Nobody would know. And they can even put you back. They can clone you at the point that they took you, so that if you have certain scars or even certain medical conditions, they can recreate all that to force the continuity, to continue as people would understand. There's
heavy.
no lapse. So let's keep going here. The missions vary on the contract. Companies and planetary agendas hire super soldiers for all sorts of things, just like a business that offers a service. Many go to other planets and even other realities, such as slave planets where people are farmed for what's called as real-life vampires that use human archetypes as a food source. There are hundreds of farm planets Earth technically being one of them. There are also planets full of zombies of all different types. There are planets full of gigantic insectoids and lizard-type beings that are fought for various different agendas by super soldiers. Then there's the concept of how they travel using what's called as jump rooms and portals or vortex systems similar to a Stargate, if you're familiar with the Stargate technology. Yes. Okay. It's how they get on and off ships and other planets. And there are many underwater and inner Earth bases that run SSP super soldier programs. These are connected via tunnel system and portals. Okay, so let's see here. Moving on. Men and women are both used as assets, along with beings from other planets as well, brought in as children, because like I mentioned before, children are easier to conform. The super soldier concept is often depicted in mainstream media through movies and TV shows as a work of fiction. Okay, that's a big important thing in all of the content that I teach. I talk about how mainstream media depicts fact as a work of fiction, and there's a reason for that. But it is really just disclosure of the programs themselves. They are depicted often in movies and TV, such as even Captain America. People don't realize Captain America was a super soldier. The Netflix series Altered Carbon is a series where they actually depict the extraction of consciousness out of what they call as sleeves, and then they can put it right into another body. There's a new movie out right now with Vin Diesel called Bloodshot, and this movie literally depicts the super soldiers and how they can they genetically modify your body or a clone or an avatar with nanotechnology and make you just like an unstoppable machine. So the Vin Diesel movie Bloodshot depicts that. And then another one, which I find to be really, really dark, was a TV show called Dollhouse, which is older, and it has Eliza Dushku in that. And in that TV show, they depict the type of programming that they can do that they would generally do to women. Women were used for specific types of super soldier programs and assets. You've heard of MK Ultra and things like that, Absolutely. Monarch. Things like that. So Dollhouse, if you go to like YouTube and look up season 1 recap or trailers, you can see a good example of what the show's about. And they take her character and they make her like, a programmed assassin.
Okay. I don't think I've seen that one.
And it's weird like watching it happen because she's a person and she has a personality. But when they switch her on to do whatever it is she's programmed to do mentally, she only knows her mission, and she's extremely efficient at it. So that's a similar depiction of what they would do in terms of, like, say, for example, MK Ultra programming and the other forms of, MyLabs. So let's see here. You guys can look up any of those examples, and they will depict something that has to do with the way super soldiers are made and what they're used for. I learned a lot of this from a YouTube channel called Super Soldier Talk. I'm not personally much into the Corey Good or the Randy Kramer or the Emery Smith content, and I have my own reasons for why I don't exactly follow their particular narrative anymore. But they are sources that describe the 20 and back, for example. I just feel like their content is a little bit more of like a watered down sort of public version of these concepts. Whereas like if you check out like Super Soldier Talk, which is ran by a guy named James Rink, who's also a super soldier himself, it gets into that sort of like darker nitty gritty details of what it means to become a super soldier and what they make you do. It's mind blowing. I mean, we can even talk more about it if you want.
Well, it is definitely a very just depthful conversation and topic, because it brings upon a lot of other ideas that if they do bring you back to your body and they put you in it, maybe they erase that memory and you go back to your life never knowing that you even did that, but then you have moments of deja vu or pieces of your dream or past life that seem to poke through, and it seems strange to your whole life and you don't realize it's because you've lived several other lives all packed into this one, brought right back and erased.
Yep, gone. And it's crazy because I would say over the past maybe 3 years, you're seeing an influx of experiencers coming forward and doing interviews on YouTube and doing shows on Gaia TV and stuff, where they're coming forward having memories unlocked and restored from their altars that exist as these super soldiers, and they're able to recall bits and pieces and fragments of it, but they put enough of it together to sort of tell a total story. And the really weird thing is when you study enough of these super soldier guys and women who come forward with their stories, they'll even recall working with other super soldiers that come forward, whereas these people don't know each other in their day-to-day life. They don't know each other in person, but they know each other as their alters that have been to like Mars, and they're shooting at like giant bugs and stuff, but they don't know each other on Earth. It's very interesting how all of these people are coming forward in influx, like a boom of them in the past couple of years coming forward with their memories. And I think that anybody that studies the expansion of consciousness or the concept of ascension, a lot of that process comes to waking up to a lot of hidden truths and doing a lot of shadow work that's required to explore and heal and let go so that you can continue on your journey or evolution. And part of that is going to require, like, if you're a super soldier and you don't know it, you're probably going to have to find out about it at some point so that you can explore that, become aware, and heal it so that you can continue on your journey. So although a lot of people who come into this information about super soldiers, they're really, really freaked out by it. It makes them uncomfortable. They don't want to believe it. They think, oh, that's just the shit that happens in movies. You watch too many TV shows. But it's necessary. It's responsible to do this shadow work and acknowledge the fact that these things do exist, and some people do deal with them, and some people do go through them, so that we can sort of explore that and heal whatever trauma comes from those crazy experiences. Like, ask me a question about what they do. I mean, it's dark. It's so dark.
I mean, I'm curious, man. What kind of missions do they have them doing? I mean, it's curious to think that they're using them not only for possible missions here on this planet, but using them in other places, using them in other dimensions, because a lot of people listening in might be like, wow, these guys are talking some wild shit, but you got to keep in mind that depending upon how far down the rabbit hole you go, there's a lot to be discovered, and a lot of things that don't seem even possible or plausible are very, very real. And they're more prevalent than you realize. When you have your blinders on, you're never going to see anything. So you have to start kind of peeling back on the veil a little bit. But
and doing the work. So, okay, then this one guy, well, actually several different men that don't know each other, like I said, in my studies, have talked about their training on a mission to go to a specific planet that's extremely volatile. It's hostile, okay? And they said that what their handlers would do, what their leaders would do in the organizations that's training them, is they would, a lot of these people, when they shift into their altar, they have heightened psychic abilities, and some of them are even very powerful with telekinesis, okay, to the point that when they're in their altars, or they're in, say, for example, an avatar that's been cut with extraterrestrial DNA that gives them superhuman abilities, they're extremely telekinetic. And they talk about how a lot of them don't even use guns or swords or anything like that in their combat. They just use their mind, okay? And this one guy was talking about how he was being trained to go to a vampire planet. He said there are vampire planets that are exactly the way that we depict them in our works of fiction. That there are hierarchy systems of elite, immortal, very old, powerful vampiric beings that use their human population as a food source. And these vampires are extremely dangerous. They're extremely strong, extremely fast, hard to fight in combat. So they would take you and they'd put you in a room that was like solid steel in every direction, that only had one door in and out. And what they would do is they'd put you in that room, and your training to prepare for the combat that you're going to experience on these planets is they would send in like blood-crazed vampires in the room, and you'd have to defend yourself from it using your telekinesis. And I know that what I'm saying sounds like fantasy, but it's like, where do you think we get that shit from? It comes from it really existing somewhere. And they would, if you kill the first vampire that comes in the room, then they would send 2. And if you were able to survive the attack of 2 of them with your telekinesis, then they would send 2 vampires and like a hybrid, like mutant dog thing, like a mutant hybrid animal, half something else that is extremely adept in its physique, fast, strong, dangerous. And they'd send the vampires in, and then the werewolf thing, or the giant. They have these like giant dog things that they use for training.
That's
and if you
fucked up.
kill those 3, then they would send double that. And then what would happen is you would get overrun. Eventually, you'd find a point that you couldn't defend yourself anymore, and they would kill you. You would physically die, and then they have technology that would just intercept your consciousness as it leaves the physical vessel that you're in, and they literally pop you right into another clone of your avatar, of your sleeve, and then you wake up moments later in a new body, and then they send you back into the room and do it again. And this is exactly like a video game. How many times are you in a boss battle that kills you, and you just respawn and go in and do it again
Over
until
and over
you
and over.
find a way to beat it. And that's how they would train these people, is you would die multiple times and go through a physical death experience in your body in order for you to go through the training necessary for you to handle the type of things you'd have to do when they take you on a ship or a jump room and they teleport you to Mars or to another dimension. And another thing is that I didn't mention in the lecture was that they also have alternate versions, parallel realities of planets as well that make things even more complicated. So he says there are parallel versions of Earth that were overrun by zombies, and they have to go like DARPA or here's a big one, Umbrella. Okay, everybody knows the word Umbrella, the Umbrella Corporation, from the popular game series Resident Evil. It turns out that Umbrella is a real fucking company.
And the joke kicks you in the ass because you're always like, oh, you know what I mean? It's just a game, and it really isn't. But they can guise it as that.
Right. That's part of that whole agenda, where what the mainstream media does is they depict the truth in a work of fiction in a way that's so fantastic that you would never accept it as being part of your reality. You'd never accept it as being true, because the way they show it to you is so out of your realm of believability. Your mind, your ego kicks in and it instantly chalks it up as a work of fiction, fantasy.
Absolutely.
And that's how they hide the truth for you. So there are vampire planets. There are zombie planets. And I've heard people describe zombie planets in so much detail that it's like the way that we have them depicted in our movies and TV isn't even the way that they actually really play out. That's how much you can learn from these people who have gone through the experiences. It's pretty wild. And let's see, what's another thing? I was talking about how, they can also, you remember how in my lecture I mentioned how that they'll give you implants?
Yes.
Of explosives. So a lot of times what people would do is when they're in an avatar and they're doing like a 20 and back as a super soldier, let's say, for example, they fucking snap, they can't take the stress, they don't want to do the killing, they don't want to do, oftentimes they'll have to kill their own friends and their own comrades as part of training, and they just can't do it. And they'll try to escape. They'll try to flee, they'll try to run away with their super soldier body and break out of the system. And their fucking general, their handler will just press a button and your fucking head will blow up. And then you're conscious for dying. And then they just intercept your consciousness and put you back in another clone, in another avatar. You wake up 5 minutes later and they're like, that was warning number 1. Try it again.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's how they force compliance too. So I can tell you right now that none of the people that have come forward with these stories and the memories of these experiences have ever opted in consciously out of their own free will. It's oftentimes that the organizations seem to have an ability to find out when a child is adept in their psychic abilities or their intuitive abilities, and then they like to sort of capitalize on the people that have those innate gifts and turn them into super soldiers because it makes them more intuitive and more efficient on the battlefield. And I mean, that's what I got.
Well, I mean, and it's crazy because it reminds you, as you said, with Hollywood movies and everything, as X-Men goes. I mean, you've got people who have a mutant gene, so to speak, because they have some type of psychic ability or strange ability that they can grab you when you're young, train you and break you and learn to use you as a weapon. And it's pretty wild. As I said, I was reading about a case where they were using remote viewing during the wars, and they were having people remote view across the planet and show up in missile silos and rail yards where they've never been in their life. They've never even been to that country, and they're seeing it vividly, and they're jotting down on paper what they're visioning. And whenever they did do flyovers, sure enough, everything's exactly where the person drew it out to be, to a T. It's pretty wild that you got to imagine if someone has that ability to begin with, if you have someone really shaping that for the good or bad, it can be an amazing gift. They're just using it for whatever their means are. But it's amazing what gifts people have out there.
Well, yeah, two things I want to go ahead and expand on now that you brought that up. Is a friend of mine, she has a podcast that she puts out for free on YouTube, and she just did an episode a few days ago about MyLabs and super soldier programs because she was actually able to remote view.
Oh, okay.
She can consciously remote view, and some people are adept at it. Some people could be trained into it, and some people have a really hard time doing it at all. But she was doing it, and she went into a military base. And from what I understand is if you remote view into a high security area like any of these shadow organizations or bases and stuff where the military is doing stuff they don't want you to know about, they actually can find out when someone remote views.
They pick up your mind frequency, and now they know you're there. You still there?
Hey, you there?
Oh, there we go. I think I lost you there for a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. We had a little bit of technical difficulties there. I said I just lost our train of thought. What were we saying?
Well, what I was saying was my friend. How much did you hear about my friend recalling her remote viewing experience? Oh,
you said about her remote viewing experience. Yeah, and I said that whenever you go into those buildings, they pick up a mind frequency of some sort, and they know that you are now there.
Right. Now, she was pinged, okay? She was fucking marked. Once they did that, not only did they know it was happening, but they can trace your energy frequency back to your physical body. And then she said that she was taken through MyLabs into, they gave her a paralysis. She was taken in her sleep, and a sleep paralysis idea, which is something you and I have talked about in the past on this show. Go check it out. And a very comprehensive episode about sleep paralysis. Well, she was taken during sleep paralysis, and then she was brought into a facility where they were studying her because they basically busted her remote viewing into their private facility. And they said that what they did was they actually depicted reptilians. And she said that they weren't real reptilians, but they were able to sort of fabricate this scenario in her mind that she was going through to try to create fear. They made fake reptilians to try to scare her while they were sort of interrogating her as to who she is, why she how she knew about that facility, why she was there to begin with, and they tried breaking her mentally.
Okay.
And then eventually they ended up bringing her back to her body And then when she woke up the next day, she was able to recall a lot about the encounter. Now, one side thing about her is that she's really big into the whole reptilian archetype. And she doesn't have a negative or a fear-based perspective about those beings. She has more of a positive one because she says that she has like incarnations with reptilian species. So that's why they were trying to use reptilians to scare her in her interrogation, was like a sort of like psychological warfare. We're going to turn your own people against you, to figure out why you were here and what you were doing. So she was brought back, but she actually, I think that she was taken more than once, and she wrote a whole book about it. So I wanted to drop that real quick because you mentioned remote viewing, and I wanted to sort of caution people that if you can remote view, use it to find your keys, okay? Use it to find your TV remote, but don't go digging around in places that they obviously don't want people, because they will know that you're there.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a tricky thing because astral projection and remote viewing are very similar in certain regards, but they're different. So I'm all for the astral projection, travel, amongst the cosmos people. It's a great thing. But you got to be careful remote viewing and tuning into frequencies in people's homes or businesses, because it's nothing good can come from it.
No, when you leave your body and you are in an astral state, you're technically non-physical. And when you're in that non-physical state, which is a higher density frequency, you are now on a whole other playing field. It's out of your training. I'm telling you right now. You can teach yourself to go there and experiment, but there are going to be beings and entities that exist there innately that understand the mechanics of being in an astral projection state or a remote viewing state, or even lucid dreaming idea. There are beings that exist there and entities that exist there that's their territory. And you can go there consciously, but you won't really know how the mechanics work in those frequencies, which is also why, believe it or not, the use of psychedelics can be a very powerful tool in unlocking your consciousness and expanding your mind and waking you up. But it can also be when you put yourself into an altered state, like using ayahuasca or dimethyltryptamine like psilocybin. Going into those altered states, once again, raises your vibrational frequency, and you can actually slip out of your body. Your consciousness can go into those other dimensions that you know nothing about. So It's always suggested that when using those tools, which is what they are tools, you have to have an understanding of what you're getting yourself into, and maybe take baby steps and do it in safe situations that are controlled, not just willy-nilly with ayahuasca or remote viewing into a bunker underneath, the Atlantic Ocean. It's not safe.
Yeah, you got to take it. I mean, if you want to work at it over years and get better at it, feel free to do so. But I think people try to tamper with things in the esoteric realm that are beyond their caliber of skill set.
Yes.
And everybody wants to be the king without taking the journey and the road to get there. And it's slippery slope, folks. I mean, even with magic and the occult practices, everybody wants to be a master magician, but you could understand that is years and years of training and studying and applying and practicing to get certain vibrations and skill sets that you can use in a certain pattern that work for you. To change what's around you. You can't just jump from one to the end. And if for some reason you can start to access points at that, at that specific point, you're messing with things you're not calibrated to do so just yet. So I mean, it's hard to explain for anybody out there that doesn't know what we're talking about, but just tread carefully whenever you're messing with things that you're not exactly ready for just yet.
Right. What I would do is do the work and be interested and be curious, but maybe find people that are more experienced in using those tools, whether it's sacred plant medicine or whether it's teaching yourself to astral project, whatever that medium is for you, whatever that tool is. Find organizations that are familiar with it and know how to do it safely and are a bit further along in the sort of process, so that you don't just stumble into a situation that you can't turn back from.
Exactly. I mean, there is points in the road that if you cross, you cannot cross back. So take your time. There's no race. You have this life and maybe many lives to learn the things that you want to. So just take your time with it. Everybody's always in
There's
such
a
a big
bunch.
rush to get nowhere. You know what I mean? That's one thing about, us as a physical being, that when we develop the ego, we develop the sense of we're important, or what we're doing is important, and you start to value time, and time doesn't exist. So when you start to really look at it that way, you put value behind something that's not real, and everything's important, and my time's important. It's not like that.
It's not. So, no, I resonate with that very much so. I think that we innately always try to fast track whatever process that we're on, whatever journey it is, whatever training we're going through. We're always looking for shortcuts.
We are.
But the paradox is that the most succinct and beneficial way to go through anything is what I call the path of least resistance. And oftentimes the path of least resistance is not the fast way. It's not the easy way. But it's hard for us to accept that, because we all want to do things as quickly and as easily as possible, and I get that. But I just mean that sometimes the path of least resistance isn't always the most obvious. It isn't always, the quickest way to do things.
Sometimes it's guised as the harder way. You look at it and you're like, well, why the hell do I want to go that way? That's no fun. But if you went that way, it's actually less resistance than going the way that you thought would be more beneficial for you.
Yes. Yeah, like when we end up doing things in a way that we didn't, anticipate. Like what we do is we always assign like some sort of insistency when we want to do something or get something done. We're like, all right, my goal is to like, I need to get $1,000. That's my goal. So what we do is we always think about the fastest and the easiest way to do that. But it's not always the path of least resistance. And if you open yourself up to accepting new and alternative ways to get the $1,000 that you hadn't sort of conceived on. Okay, now what I mean is, if you think like, okay, I need $1,000 to pay my bills or pay my rent, but I know that I can only get that money by my parents loaning it to me or winning like a scratch ticket. So you're actually limiting a lot of the ways that you can get the $1,000. Because we always have this insistency on the way things need to play out. But what that does is it actually closes a lot of doors, and it limits us in the ways that we can get what we need or what we want or achieve our goals if we just stay open to things actually not going the way that we thought they would.
I resonate with that 100%. What we don't realize is that we are conditioned so much from birth that we don't understand our own reaches and limits that we can go to, because you think one way, you're conditioned. All the things that you've come in contact with and have been influenced by create, as we said, the ego and who you are as a person, but that also sets your limitations and your boundaries. And when you start always looking at things a certain way, nope, I can't do that. That wouldn't work. Well, that's the way you're always going to look at a situation like that over and over and over again. So you automatically cut out opportunities that could be present because that's your mindset, and you shape your life like that. So you carve out a very specific path. But when you learn to step back and not set limitations for yourself and be truthfully open, visual about everything you go about, it opens up a lot more doorways, and life is a lot different.
Well said, man. Well said. That's one of the most transformative concepts that we can take on. We can sort of practice and study and assume in our own realities, is accepting that things don't always have to be the way we think they have to be. And then you unlock so much energy and you unlock so much potential by just sort of going with the path of least resistance. We often create that resistance for ourselves when we always think we know the way things need to be. So I resonate with what you said very much too.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's the way that it is. As I said, we are conditioned, brainwashed beings, and that's why the path to higher ascension is to higher ascension. You have to strive for it and climb for it, because you have to climb beyond the bounds of the boundaries you've set and that have been set upon you. And once you get past that, then you can see a little bit differently and choose from there what path you want to take. But it's all possible, folks. It's all there.
Yes, it is.
And the things that and it's kind of same concept goes with what you believe is real and what isn't real. If your whole life you grew up believing that the things we talk about on our show were 100% real, and anything not that is kind of wacky, then there's no doubt in your mind. But the only reason that some people look at the esoteric world or the supernatural world and shake their head is because they were always taught that it wasn't real, whether what they were taught was right or not. And you'll start to find out that a lot more strange things goes on than most people realize. On a constant daily basis, something strange happens to people all around you or you yourself. You just brush it off. But there's a great big world that you can't see because you're just only seeing one level of the veil.
Absolutely, man. Well said. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense to me. And to circle back with the super soldier idea and the SSP, it's a lot to take in, and there is enough information on the internet that you can research for yourselves if you're interested in the topic. There is a lot of real human beings like you and I that have gone through these programs and have experienced these things. And I think that if you're coming into this information, if you're hearing this episode, whether you resonate with this concept or not, you have now come into this information in your reality. You now have an awareness that the stuff that you see in the movies and the TV is actually telling you the truth. And these things are happening for real, behind the scenes, outside of your awareness. And I don't think that that has to be a negative, scary thing for you in your reality. I think that if anything, you're just peeling back the curtain and seeing what else exists. What more has been hidden from our society, from our public society for years and years and years. I think these things go back, 60, 70, maybe even 80 years. I think in terms of the technology that they use in the secret space programs, I think that it's 60, 70, 80 years more advanced in our future in terms of technology. Okay, so if anything, it's just interesting knowing the kind of stuff that they use. They use laser beams and stuff like you see in Star Wars. They use those as weapon technology, lasers. They don't use ballistics and metal anymore. They use, for their food and things like that, they use what's called as replicators. Have you ever seen the show Star Trek?
Absolutely.
The Next Generation, where they go and they say hot coffee with, whipped cream, and then it makes you whatever you want. Those things actually exist. They're like 3D printers that can replicate food. All of that technology exists, and they use it in the secret space programs. And I think that was probably, for me personally, that was one of the biggest things that I found interest in, was the replicators and the advanced teleportation technology that they use, and the healing technologies that they use in those programs. It really exists. And honestly, guys, what we want to do is we want to have an awareness of it, because the more awareness we have about the technology they use in those super soldier programs, the more it enters our collective consciousness. The more people have an awareness of it, the more people have an interest and a desire to use it. I think in some way, shape, or form, we'll be able to sort of gain access to these technologies ourselves to benefit in a mass, global scale. Can you imagine what would change in our society if we were able to get access to a technology that could regrow a severed limb that was blown off during a space battle? It exists. It's out there. I don't know how it works, but these guys talk about it like it's common knowledge to them. They're in their cafeterias on their spaceships. They can say, I want an apple, a slice of pizza, and a vegan burrito. And then their technology just manifests it there, and they sit down and eat it with their friends. And then they go back to, Saturn and blow stuff up. So it's like these things, they happen, man. And I want that for us. I want that for our families and for our community, to take advantage of these technologies that would change our society forever in a good way.
They certainly would. And one thing you said that really stuck out to me is, think of the concept if you have political figures using people as sleeper cells and they can travel through different lapses of time, they can know and have the cures to all the diseases and have all the technology that they need, and they can come back in time, take you, use you for whatever purposes they need. And as Dan explained, it's wild. They put you inside a new skin, sleeve. And what that reminds me of is when Adam and Eve, ate the apple and God kicked them from the Garden of Eden, he took them from their light body and gave them a flesh body. He gave them a flesh sleeve, and he threw them into the world and said, this is now what you are. You are now a soul that is dumbed down and given an ego and slapped inside a skin suit. Yeah. And you were that, and that's what people became, and that's what this is it's enslavement of spirit. And they're using super soldiers, and they regain that spirit or that soul again, as you said, and they slap it inside another body to do it over and over and over again. And they let people around in the world live lives dying of disease and not having these certain things and technologies that we could have that they have that are being used.
Right.
And it's a full way of control. And they can use us to their benefiting power, and then they slap us back in our normal bodies, and anybody we tell is going to think we're crazy. You say, oh, I was a super soldier and I lived 300 different lives and did this and this. People are going to be like, wow, you're insane.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's very real to the people that experienced it.
It is, and I think oftentimes they do things that relate, as you said, the reptilian thing. They could do something like that to her, and then if she's talking about reptilians, people right away are going to shake their head if they know she's into that all the time. And they're going to like, yeah, it was just a dream because she reads about this stuff so much and she's so into it. Meanwhile, it used the reptilians as a guise because it's something that fits to you.
Yep.
It seems so much more credible to you because you're like, oh my God, I've seen these reptilians, but it makes everyone else a little bit more distant because you're like, oh my God, even more stuff about this subject. This person really is crazy. So it's very well planted. They're very smart in their technology and how their usage of it.
Yes, they are. And now that we're on the topic of technology, I actually want to circle back to one more concept about these super soldiers. That not all of them, if you're put in a 20 and back or whatever program it is, not every single person is actually taken out of their body and put into a sleeve or an avatar. What they also do is if you're in a type of program that doesn't require immediate combat. Okay, so say for example you're a pilot of some sort, or you work in communications, or you work in intelligence, and you have other skills and abilities that don't require you to be on the battlefield, but they still need you for a very long time, they won't always ever take you out of your consciousness, out of your organic body. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll keep your organic body that you were born with, and what they'll do is you'll go through these programs and you'll do your service, and then what they'll do is they'll age regress you back to your age that you were and your physical state that you were when they took you, is another type of technology they have. So if you don't need to go into a super soldier body, an avatar where you can, where you're 10 feet tall and you can kill 20 people at one time, there's much less violent things you actually can do in these programs. Then all they'll do is just keep you in your body and they'll age regress you back. So that's another technology they have as well. They can manipulate your age.
That's crazy, man. Think of all the possibilities.
Endless.
It is
endless.
Absolutely
and here we
endless.
are, suffering. Whereas if like even 10% of the technology and the tools that they have in those programs would go public, I think our society would change overnight.
Oh, it would, because there'd be so much, as I said, so much technology that we could use for the better and for good. And if that was exposed, it would start to change the world. Would it happen overnight? No, but it would start to happen overnight, and it would spread quickly. And I mean, you fast forward a decade down the road, and how much life would be different, and how much pain and greed have been, caused because of the different organizations out there using people as slaves, so to speak. Like, can you imagine a worse hell than to be taken against your will, forced to live multiple lives and deaths, slapped inside your body, and then made it all look like a dream?
Yep, it's wild. And I've studied enough different people going through these processes that I've explained on tonight's show, that enough people out there have conclusive evidence and experiences that these things are happening. So there you have it, folks. I mean, that's what I have for you on the Super Soldier programs, and it is tied to the SSP. I know that the SSP has sort of a different description, and people have a different understanding of it because it's becoming more public. You know how, like, I guess Trump has a Space Force now? I think what that is what's called a soft disclosure that is going to slowly publicize the concept of Super Soldier programs by using the Space Force as like a what is it? A guise or like a face? What am I trying to say here? They're using it as like a front.
Yeah.
To disclose what's already been happening for 80 years.
I think that's easy to do. I think, like I said, they have a lot of things that we don't know about, and they can trickle it downstream so slowly that when we get that new phone or that new device, we're like, look at how technologically advanced we are. Yeah. Meanwhile, that's ancient news, and it's like using stone tablets and chisels. And I really think that that's how it is sometimes. It's like, we're like, oh my God, we're so smart, we're earthlings. And I think that they're sitting back behind the scenes like, wow, we created that 300 years ago.
I've heard it, man. I've heard the same thing. You know, it's like I've heard ET groups talk about how we have ESETI. ESETI Ranch is sending out radio waves, like in that movie Contact, hoping that an advanced civilization will hear our radio frequency, our AM, FM, you know, analog frequency that we project into space and in a more signal. Meanwhile, the aliens are so beyond the radar of that technology that they're not even looking for it.
Yeah, like they're so past that's not even a thought on their mind. Like, who the fuck would be using that? You know? No, I dig it, man. I think that that's really the case, as I do believe, because if you think about it, yes, we are technologically advanced. We have a lot of good technology. But how come movies 40 years ago were showing things like cell phones and showing devices on us, things that supposedly weren't even dreamed up yet, and then became to fruition and started to kind of pop up? No, that's because they've already been around for a long time, and they slowly trickled information to, you know, the slaves, and we're happy with what we get. Meanwhile, it's so much beyond that. As you said, they have devices that can capture somebody's essence and plug it somewhere else, with clones, with laboratory experiments that are beyond our comprehension. And it's easy to erase, it's easy to manipulate when you have these amazing tools to use against the people. And meanwhile, we're so distracted by ancient technology that we feel is new.
It's wild.
It's pretty wild, folks.
I'm writing a lecture, and it's not ready yet, but I'm doing a report on the concept of what I call spiritual technology. Okay? Spirit technology. And it doesn't involve any devices. It doesn't involve the internet. It doesn't involve a phone or a computer or anything of that nature. It's sort of like superhuman abilities that we all have innately as part of our being, that we've either been lied to about, has been kept from, deprogrammed out of us. All of these sort of spirit technologies are things that we have access to, and I'm going to start seeing if I can write about them and describe them, and then see if I can teach people how to use them, so that we can all sort of unlock more of that inner power that we have as well. And I think that, believe it or not, now this might sound crazy, but believe it or not, as races advance technologically, far, far, far beyond anything that you and I understand, I think that they ultimately get to a point where they want to go back to an organic sort of holistic approach to their lifestyles and their consciousness, getting back into more spiritual practices, even in more advanced races, because I think technology is actually subservient to us. We just don't see it that way. I think that we are crippled by our technology now, the way that we use it now, in a very disempowering way. But we made it.
Fully.
We created it. It's within our reality. We as humans made the technology that we're using, and it's contained within our consciousness. So it's still a tool that we can use. We just don't want to let technology use us as a tool. So I think part of getting out of some of that sort of those thought processes and ways of thinking, those paradigms of technology almost suffocating us, is getting into our spirit technology, going back to the grassroots as a human organism and unlocking the powers within us that are ours to sort of reclaim. Spirit technology. That's a little bonus.
I know, I'm completely on board with that. I mean, that's a day-to-day thing for me, is trying to learn to access the higher self and all the abilities that come along with that, and to get away from the prison of the technology we've made, because it's become that, as Dan said, you start to use the technology as something that's supposed to help benefit your life. But then when it becomes your life, something's wrong there, because all it was ever meant to be was an enhancer, not to become life itself. And for a lot of people, that is the case. How many likes do I have? What's my next post going to post? Who's, what's so-and-so doing down the street? And it shouldn't be like that. When you get back to your spirit technology, you can truly find who you are as a person and find an endless world of capabilities out there that have always been there. They've just been disguised by all the static.
Straight up. And static is the perfect word. Let me touch on one more thing real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll finish it out after that. You wrap it up, my brother.
Yeah, because I like where this is going. Remember how I told you that, and you know this as well, that they take adept children and put them in the super soldier programs. These kids are the ones who are more in touch with their innate abilities, like psychic mediumship, and you mentioned remote viewing. That spirit technology, that's what I'm talking about. Now, I think that the human race and some of the organizations that are trying to manage it are moving us in this sort of like transhumanism agenda that technology will literally consume us. And if we're not careful, technology, we're going to be immersed in it. And remember how I talked about consciousness being transferred around? There are some people talking about how there are agendas being designed right now to transhumanize the human organism, putting our consciousness almost into like a cloud, into like a singularity sort of cloud idea, where we never even die anymore. We just stay in like a technological sort of cloud of static, and this, that's this weirdo agenda we're not going to go into tonight, but I've been studying on that too. And what it got me thinking of is that I think the spirit technologies, like you mentioned static. Okay, let me tell you guys this. I recently logged out of my Facebook account, which has something like 6 billion people engaging in some Facebook activity every second. Okay? When I logged out of my Facebook account, like maybe about 2 weeks ago, you mentioned a static. I actually noticed that I was hearing a static, almost like a noise, like a technological sort of contamination that I didn't know was there until I logged out of Facebook and stopped using that platform to take a break, just cool down and just do some inner work. There was like a noise that I didn't even know was there until I logged out of that program and just meditated. Okay? Now, when we talk about spirit technology, you can go on Google and type in a question and get an answer for it. But what if I told you that when you properly learn how to meditate and alter your brainwave frequencies into going into like a trance, you can get information right out of the ether from just meditating, and you bypass Google?
Yep, the true internet.
This is real internet, because our reality is almost like a program itself, like a hologram itself, which means that it's contained within us. So we got to be careful with the way that we go as a society in the direction of technology, because we could immerse in technology to the point that our tools start using us as tools. Or we can choose a more organic sort of holistic approach where we remind ourselves that all of the technology exists as our creation. It's contained within our consciousness. And then you talk about more advanced civilizations that actually are far, far, far more advanced than Earth, that don't use any technological devices. We won't go there, but think about it. They've bypassed the need for it.
They've reached the higher plane, and once you reach that, you don't need any of those devices anymore.
You know, let's get weird. Celestial Oddities, just a pair of normal guys hanging out.
That's it, folks. If you enjoy the show, please click the like, share, and follow buttons. Get it around to your friends. The more that you do that, the more that it moves us up the podcast community rankings, as I said earlier tonight, the more that it allows us to do with the show, and obviously keeps you in touch with what's going on with the show. As new releases of episodes come out, you will be notified, and it allows you to jump back and check out all of our past episodes. We got some doozies. We got all kinds of great different topics that we've covered on the show, and certainly would love to hear from you guys on what you would like to see in the upcoming future. You can message us at celestialoddities@gmail.com. Again, that's celestialoddities@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Daniel and I message and answer our emails daily, so you never have to worry about us taking forever to get back to you. Hit us up. We would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, guys, thank you very much. Here is to just inform you on topics that are new and a little esoteric, because we find value in exploring those sort of darker corners of our reality. So we hope that it helps.
Absolutely. Journey with us further down the rabbit hole, folks. We'll catch you next time on Celestial Oddities.